People are like, Hank, what? Well, first of all, what happened to your hair? I just watched a video and now it's all gone. I got a haircut, you guys. It happens all at once. It grows out slowly and then disappears very fast. That's how hair works. It goes. That's hair. That's just hair. That's how it goes. At least my hair. Some people's hair might go. It's just every person's different. But lots of people are asking about what this cover letter had in it that this person probably rightfully mocked. This is talking about my Vlogbrothers video that went up today or yesterday. I don't know when I'm gonna edit this. And the truth is that, like, one, I did look for it. I tried to find it and couldn't find it. My email address has changed since then, so it was not easy to find. Couldn't find it. And what, I'm like, that's too bad, but also thank God that it's lost. So what was it? What was it about this cover letter that was so mockable? Well, to be clear, like, the thing I remember most is that it happened. This was almost 20 years ago now, so it's not super fresh. But I remember it happening, and I remember him laughing about some of the people who I sort of like said were inspirations to me, which may very well have been like a question on the application, but like the people who I found inspiring in like the environmental movement and world. And probably those people were, let's be honest, like looking back now, pretty extreme. I have a different perspective on environmentalism. Like, look at me with my button-down plaid and my short cropped hair. I have different perspective now as an older man. And they were probably right that some of my views were a little bit out there. The other thing that like probably was a strike against was just general like overly pleased with myself language. So when you're writing a cover letter, you want to try to stand out. If there's any way to do that, it's hard, because as soon as you start to stand out, there's sort of like this is a truth with regard to all media creation. If you are making something for a very broad audience, it's going to be more boring and generic. And if you are trying to make something for a more specific audience, then you can be weirder, and then like that specific audience will be like, I love this so much. And then everybody else would be like, that is trash, not for me. And that is very much the case with a cover letter, where you can try to imagine your audience and write to the imagined audience, but be wrong about who the imagined audience was. That's probably what it was. That I was imagining that they would be like me. That they would be sort of like fresh out of college, a biochemist with a really strong penchant toward pretty extreme, hardcore environmentalist rhetoric. Now, thinking back, I'm like, boy, I'm glad didn't make any super bad decisions based on that worldview, or at least any that anybody found out about. So that's what I remember. It was sort of like, it was even a deconstruction of like a little bit of my worldview. That was like, here's why this person's worldview is kind of sucky and wrong, and like why all the people that he thinks are like really cool, smart thinkers are bad, and that also hurt. It was just a generally petrifying experience, but that is a thing to know when it comes to cover letters. Yeah, any tiny thing to differentiate yourself, but really you're not trying to stand out from the crowd by being weird or different. You're trying to stand out from the crowd by being exactly what the employer is looking for. And you're not always going to be that. And part of the process of getting a better job is to have jobs where you learn how to get better at stuff, and to have an employment record of like, I started at this point at the terrible dishwashing job, and then after 6 months you were a great employee, and like that. That's very impressive to hear about in interviews. By the way, if you start out at a low-level position and move up quickly within an organization, always a great thing to mention in a cover letter, in an application, because that's the sign that you instilled trust in someone, which is great, because trust is a lot of what employment is about. It is also a sign that you are just good at learning and growing and being competent and confident. So That's all good. At that point, I had only, I think, probably had one job out of college, and it was not relevant to what they wanted me to do. And look, I didn't really expect to get the job. I didn't get called back for an interview. That didn't hurt my feelings. You know, it did a little bit. It was a little bit like, but couldn't you see the genius of my cover letter? But then being in the room while they were like, not only could I not see the genius of your cover letter, it actually was really dumb and don't try so hard. And also, your worldview is bonkers. Now everybody's gonna be like, tell me about your bonkers worldview, Hank. What kind of eco-terrorist were you? I mean, it's funny. You come out, I don't know when I first read Ed Abbey. Was that undergrad? I don't know if it was undergrad. It might have been graduate school. But like now I read Ed Abbey and I'm like, come on, dude. There's just a lot of, you know, vilification of the other and etc. And then I like read Derek Jensen and Daniel Quinn and all that jazz. And like looking back, a lot of that stuff has become more mainstream even as I have moved toward the center. Everyone else, like other people have moved out. And that's interesting. You know, Derek Jensen, I bet I have a Derek Jensen book on that shelf still. Because I got it signed, I had a signed Derek Jensen book at one point. I don't know, maybe I don't. There it is. Is this the one that's signed by Derek Jensen? It is! This book had a huge impression on me, but I would not suggest anyone read it. Because it's just, you know, it is a radicalizing force. It is it provides a very particular perspective. And as you go through it, I don't know that it builds understanding and empathy except for the people that it wants you to build understanding and empathy for, which is understandable. And maybe those are the people and things that need more understanding and empathy these days, or at least back then. But yeah, I couldn't suggest it. That's a weird way to probably make a lot of people very curious about this book, but it's not easy to be this passionate about your values and this tied to values that are not represented in culture as it currently exists. It's very hard to have a deep connection to values you can't abandon when those values are not being upheld by the culture that you live inside of. And I felt that way for a while after college, after reading a lot of stuff. And then the process of coming back to, you know, a more centrist position is gonna, like, there's probably a lot of people who would think that I had sold my way out into that perspective. But for me, it is about the knowledge that, like, it is so rare for revolution to create sustainable change, but it is not rare for evolution to do that. And the history of the decreasing of suffering does not appear to be, to me, one of individuals overthrowing oppressiveness. It appears to be one of protest, of knowledge building, of empathy creation, and of compromise. And I know that I say that as somebody who is not dealing with any oppression at all. I don't hold it against people who I gesture toward a book that I've just put on the floor for some reason, who get very passionate about their values and frustrated when they experience society not live in line with those values, especially when I'm sympathetic to those values, like I am with, say, for example, veganism. But I understand that passion. I understand that frustration. I'm a bit of a relativist, you guys. I think that you gotta do it a day at a time, and I think that anger and frustration and rabble rousing is part of that. I think that talking and being in a button-down shirt with your close-cropped hair and being passionate about it from the straight-laced 38-year-old upper-class perspective is also important. So I'm gonna do that because that's who I am and how I can do it. But that wasn't really what I started the video out to be about. But yes, and I have been amazed by the process of me becoming less sharp about all of those things while the rest of the world becomes more sharp about them. Or maybe you just hear the loud voices of sharpness on the internet, and there are people who understand multiple perspectives, but like, it's a hard thing to yell about on Twitter. I understand both of these perspectives! Ah! How do you understand and know about the intense and dramatic suffering of so many people on the planet, and also animals, and still live a joyful life? Hit me up with your answers in the comments below, and smack that like button!